Hi guys, politicians usually say behind closed doors, never let a tragedy or crisis go to waste. It isn't usually the media instead that try to use something like the horrible acts committed by Lucy Letby in order to push a narrative or policy, but we've seen how Fox News type hackery has been imported into Britain and Europe over the last 10 years. Here GB News host Patrick Christie seems to believe it is now the perfect time to talk about reinstating capital punishment in Britain. This individual involved was free to act because of massive failings in the system. Fixing those should be the focus, not some biblical sense of justice. Have a listen.
Let's have another look at that mugshot, shall we? And I just want to ask, does evil exist? Are we looking there at evil? It was claimed that she exhibited Munchausen syndrome, that she had a hero complex, that she's a narcissist. But then you hear that she actually wanted to kill babies so that she could grieve with a married doctor that she likes. I also want to ask a series of other questions as well. How was this allowed to happen, and happen for so long? Doctors were warning about her for ages. One raised concerns and was sent an email that said, it's unlikely that anything is going on. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Well, babies die. That's what happens, isn't it? The Countess of Chester Hospital has to account for this. How did they allow the worst child serial killer in modern British history to prowl their wards? Managers repeatedly refused to believe that Letby was to blame and even tried to have her reinstated on the ward, apparently. Months after doctors insisted that she be removed from frontline duties. How do we know this isn't still happening now, just with somebody else? Another question is about the standard of baby care in general. This is by no means the first baby death scandal. One doctor messaged Letby and said that she was one of the few nurses that he trusts with his own children. I mean, good grief, what does that tell you? And then there's the question of the sentence, isn't there? Surely this is a full life term, but is life even enough? She didn't have the courage to come and face the final verdicts. This is the worst crime imaginable. Would the death penalty be the only fitting punishment?
Now, unfortunately, I'm extremely cynical when it comes to GB News, and I believe that they're pushing this because it's a right-wing belief. If you do a survey of people on the far right, they're fully supportive of reinstating capital punishment. And I understand when it comes to cases like this, and in this case in particular, you know, most reasonable people would say, yes, we don't want this person still in circulation. We don't want them around. They should be punished in this way. How is it possible to think of anything else? The death penalty is not a deterrent. It doesn't deter people from committing these crimes. Even if Britain had capital punishment, it wouldn't have stopped this woman. What instead we should be looking at is, how do we fix this? How do we stop this from happening again? This woman needs to be studied. We have to understand, how did she come to us? How did she come to the conclusion that it was acceptable to do this? What is wrong with her? How do we find out, how do we discover this type of behavior in the future and stop it? And how do we create measures that allow, for example, people who are concerned to be able to raise concerns, to raise those concerns, to raise red flags, to whistleblow? This is what we should be taking out of this, not this idea that we need to reinstate capital punishment. But unfortunately, this is the likes of GB News and others who will jump on this bandwagon. Now we need to reinstate capital punishment because this person is horrible. Yes, this person is horrible. I completely agree with that. But reinstating the death penalty will not fix what has happened. It will not stop it from happening again. It will not provide the family with closure. I understand people's disgust with the fact that this individual is going to live the rest of her life in prison. That people want more than that. But we can't reinstate a capital punishment based on individual cases. Because we've seen so many cases in the US where people have been exonerated following DNA evidence. People who are on death row. People who were scheduled for execution. If that had gone ahead, if that evidence hadn't arrived in time, those people would have been executed, wrongly executed in many cases. And there have been cases in the US where people have been wrongly executed. The information, the evidence was discovered after, too late. That's the problem with capital punishment. It's understandable in cases like this, where you say you want this person taken completely out of circulation. You don't want them getting out of prison. You don't want them, you don't want to see their face anymore. But these people have to be studied. We have to understand what makes them tick so we can stop it happening in the future. That has to be what we take from this. Putting in measures to stop it happening in hospitals, creating a system where people can raise alarm bells, can whistleblow, so that when they see this type of activity happening, they can call it out and feel confident that their superiors, their bosses, the management will support them in that. That's what we should be taking from it, not this knee-jerk reaction of let's bring back capital punishment. I know people will disagree with me on this, but I think this was necessary to speak about. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated, even those who disagree with me.